This podcast is sponsored by Magic Rock Brewing. Currently, you can get free delivery on all orders over £40 and 10% of all online orders by using our code of TakesThatChance10.
Christopher Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Brady down the left and Moy stayed onside. Here's Mounier! 2-0 Huddersfield Town on the opening day of the Premier League. 1-2 wicket Tunga. Here's Moy, right-footed. 1-0 Huddersfield Town. Lindelof misses his header. De Quattro's in. Round De Gea. 2-0 Huddersfield Town. 2-0 Huddersfield Town. Here's Sanka to turn it into the pass. Yes! And Tommins scored. Tommins has scored one of the most important goals of Huddersfield Town's history. De Quattro's forward. De Quattro's got the better. Yes! And Laurent De Quattro scores. Laurent De Quattro scores.
Right, can Town defy defeat at the Deepdale, ladies and gentlemen? Let's find out. Welcome to the warm-up episode 21. Joining me, your host, Brady Frost, is a man who is crossing the podcast divide to make his warm-up debut. It's the Town Social's Cameron Pope. How are you, Cameron?
I'm very well, thank you, Brady. Yourself?
I'm good, mate. Good. Look at this unity across the podcast. It's lovely, lovely stuff. Anyway, joining Cameron and I is a man who's used to a lot of moaning from Town fans. So that's why we thought we'd get him on here. It's BBC Radio Lee's Johnny Buchan. How are you, Johnny?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm surprised that you guys are all so friendly. I expected a bit of needle. You know, I expected there to be some gloves out this evening, thinking the two podcasts going head to head. I thought I was going to have to separate you.
There's desperate times, Johnny, or desperate times calling for desperate measures, you know, maybe at the start of the season, but I think we're all hopefully trying to pull the club in the right direction now.
Yeah, fair.
If there's not unity with the club, there needs to be unity with the podcast, mate. That's what it's about. So,
unity in the terraces, lads. I like it.
Exactly. And by the way, this is on air. You know, you heard what we said off air.
True.
Joking. So anyway, chaps, before we get onto the Preston, I have got a bit of news for those who are wondering where Chris Markham has gone. He has left this podcast to join Bolton Wanderers as their technical performance director. So it means he won't be doing podcasts anymore. He'll be doing some recruitment stuff for Bolton Wanderers. So look at that, lads. You can go places by being on this podcast. So,
is it? Fantastic.
There you go. I mean, it's definitely not to do with the fact that he works for Huddersfield Town in England. It's this podcast. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, so all the best for Chris, and I don't think it'll be the last we hear of him anyway. Hopefully he'll still be in touch. But we will move on to Preston. Just a little bit to set the scene. So they're 14th in the league with 40 points. They drew last night at QPR. But they are actually below Huddersfield in the form table, which surprised me. And they have only won once in the last 6 games. And actually have only won 4 games at home this season. But they do have the 4th best away record in the league. So that's why they're higher than Huddersfield. So I asked you lads to do your research. So when they played us early in this season, Huddersfield lost 2-1 despite leading 1-0. Well, we've seen what happens with Huddersfield this season. But I'll come to you first, Johnny. What did you kind of think of that match? And how do you think Huddersfield have been playing recently?
I think when you look back at that game, it was one of the first signs, wasn't it, of this frailty that Huddersfield Town have mentally, of conceding goals back to back. I think both goals were within about 2 or 3 minutes, weren't they, in the second half? And that from then on has been a bit of a theme, hasn't it? Happened against Birmingham as well, I think, and a couple of others where goals were scored pretty quickly, and it shows that mental fragility. So it was the first signs that we kind of saw of that. In terms of recently, I saw luckily enough to see the 4-1 win against Swansea. So that's my last impression, because that's the last full game I saw. I obviously know about what happened in the Derby game, which was apparently utterly dreadful. Couldn't have been any more polar opposites to the Swansea game. But that Swansea game gave you a taste, didn't it, of what is possible from this Huddersfield Town side. We know that you've got talented players. We know that the football you play is swashbuckling, for want of a much better term and a less cliched term. But it is fantastic stuff. However, the frailties that we spoke about from that Preston game all that time ago are coming to the fore. And I think there's some big worrying signs. That win over Swansea, I think made people relax a little bit more. It certainly felt, from our perspective, a little bit more of a gap had been breached, which meant you could relax a little bit more. But it certainly hasn't, really put the Wolves away, has it? They're still at the door somewhat, I would have thought.
No, I completely agree with that, mate. Luckily, you didn't watch the Derby game, because that is, I know a lot of fans use that, but it was genuinely 2 hours of my life I'll never get back. That was horrendous. Cameron, what about yourself?
I saw Cozzy tweeting saying it was the worst performance of the season that he'd seen.
I'd second that.
Yeah, really.
A lot of time midweek and a little bit of money as well tuning in for that game, and really, really wishing that I hadn't, to be honest. And it was a shame. But you look back to when we first faced Preston, and I think you're quite right, Johnny. You can see a lot of the problems that were abounding then still coming back to haunt us now. Going back to that time in 2020, it was an extremely disappointing result at the time on the back of a 4-game unbeaten run, and that did prove to be a bit of a turning point. We only won 1 game from our next 6 after that, and that was that fluke down at Millwall where we put 3 past them, and that in a sense is what I feel that the Swansea result might have been. It was great, and we all got swept along in it, and we all enjoyed it. It was great. But it papered over a lot of cracks too, and that wasn't the Swansea that turned up most weeks that turned up to the John Smiths on Saturday. And I think that's the first time where we've actually played strongly against a team with 10 men. Of course, not the way you'd imagine a team going out of 10 men, but the fact that we had the 3-goal advantage at that point effectively killed the game off, and there was no real chance for them. Then it was a foregone conclusion. But since then, that was back down to earth with a bump and a sore backside on Tuesday, wasn't it? Because it was a woeful performance, and I still, it's a shame that we look over the course of a few months and we still see the same issues. As regards Preston, we started well against them last time. Campbell did so well for the goal. There were questions at the time about offside, and I'm still not entirely sure. But he did what he does best. He made a nuisance of himself, and he found some space between the centre halves. And I point this out because I think we might be reliant on him again. But after that, they caused us a lot of grief. They hit us with a high press, and we went for the 3-5-2 to get away from that, to have some men at the back to play around him. To an extent, it worked in the first half, but then careless errors are what cost us. And that, again, is what's costing us at the moment. Okay, you probably could have called Ben Hamer into question for the second goal. Juninho Buchan caught flat-footed for the first. And then, Naby Sarr wasn't his brightest day in a Town shirt, and then had the red card at the end of it. But then you look forward to midweek, and it's the same things again. It wasn't Ryan Schofield's best day, was it? Let's be honest. He started very well in a Town shirt. I think now the lack of experience is starting to show. He flapped from the corner that came in the lead up to the first goal, and I feel like he could have done better when the ball did go in. And the second, the whole defence was cut apart by one pass. We saw Jayden Brown fall foul of the naivety that's dogged us at times this season as well. 2 yellows in 14 minutes. And on the one hand, I don't look to scapegoat him. I actually feel for him, because this was a time now for him to press on with Harry Toffolo's injury. And really now it puts more pressure on Aaron Rowe. Big 90 minutes for him at the weekend. I imagine that's who we're going to go with. And so really, again, we're looking at the same problems that we were struggling with back at the time when we lost to Preston the first game. I think the same ones are coming to roll around again for us now.
Look at this insight, mate. You should be hosting this. I'm just like, we're a bit rubbish. Look at that.
It's lockdown, mate. Nothing better to do than talk about football. Go and stir crazy.
I like it. I'm impressed, mate. I'm impressed. I'm used to Cozzy. No, I'm joking, Cozzy. Love you, mate. Anyway, we'll come on to Preston, because I think you summarised it great there, Cam. We're gonna look at key players for Preston. I'm gonna jump in first. Well, that depends. Well, anyway, I'll go for this. I'm going to go for Scott Sinclair. So sorry if one of you lads has him, you feel free to jump on after this. But I was really amazed that he was their top goal scorer of 8 goals this season. And then we'll hear from one of the Preston fans later on. But he's kind of one of them where he doesn't seem to do much for 70 minutes, but then he has a chance and seems to convert it. And he's played anywhere kind of across the front three. So, to be honest, I just look at that and I'm like, God, couldn't Huddersfield do with a player like that who, can do nothing but score and then, be quite versatile. So he's one to watch out for, because, again, he's got that experience. Obviously, he's 31 now, but, I remember in the Championship when he was with Swansea, and that's going some years back, but he was absolutely on fire. So I've gone for Scott Sinclair. What about you, Johnny? Who have you gone for?
I like Brad Potts, and I think the battle in the middle of the park is something that Town are losing far too often at the moment. And I think that we all love Jonathan Hogg, and we know he's been given a new deal and all that sort of stuff. But I do still think there are some holes in the middle of the park. The amount of times that you see the ball, particularly I was thinking of the Middlesbrough game, the ball getting played through the centre wasn't getting cut out, and there were huge gaps between the centre halves, as Cameron mentioned, with Town exposing gaps in the centre halves. I think that Town have been exposed with that as well. It's why I think they looked so much better when they played against Swansea with the 3 centre halves in there, because I think it just solidified that and blocked that gap up almost. So I think Brad Potts, I saw a lot of him when he played at Barnsley. So he was obviously a few years younger, but I was covering Barnsley at that time. He was massively influential for them. He can win a tackle in the middle of the park, but he's also got quite good vision about him. He's got very, very composed on the ball when the ball comes to him. And I think that could be a problem for Huddersfield. If he can win that little battle in the midfield, whether that's against Hogg or whether it's against O'Brien or even Buchan, if Buchan is a bit more central, whoever, even Vallejo, if Vallejo's played in the centre of the park, whichever way they go, I think that is a crucial battle in this game. They're not scoring a lot of goals out, Preston, particularly at home, one in the last 5 or 6 at home now. So they're not scoring a lot. So it's going to be a low scoring game. There's going to be fine margins in it. And I really do think that middle of the park battle is going to be the one that could define it when they meet tomorrow, or Saturday, isn't it? Saturday.
I took the same tack as you, actually, Brady. I went for Scott Sinclair as well. Definitely drawn in by his goal scoring figures, which took me by surprise as well. If he plays, he's a threat, but you're quite right to point out his age. There's a reason he's now playing at Preston. And no disrespect to them, we know that he's capable of far better, and he's done far better in his career. But now he's not as fit as he once was, of course. What's happened this month is that he's played and been rested, on, off and on, off. He played 90 minutes yesterday for us, so in midweek. And so possibly Town might escape him coming into this weekend. But of course, that's something that Town don't really have ever since Josh Caroma got injured, an out-and-out goal threat. In some respects, a similar player, although you can really deploy Sinclair as a striker in a way that doesn't quite work as well, perhaps, with Caroma. But no, I think that if he does feature, I think that's the one I'll be keeping an eye on the most for Preston.
Yeah, and I think well, like we say, another lad who we'll hear from the Preston guy later, but Anthony Gordon. So he's a young lad on loan from Everton, another one of these wonder kids from Merseyside who's meant to go on and take the world by storm. But I saw some of the highlights against the in their 0-0 draw against QPR, and he looked quite bright and made an impression. But I think Johnny's spot on with that midfield battle. Town, I mean, well, I'm sure we'll come on to it with the lineups we're going to go for, but quite a lot of lacking quite a bit in midfield, I think. But we'll move on to key players. I'm going to come to you, Cam. Who's your key player for Town? Who do you think is going to be crucial in this game?
Simple one for me. I'm going to say Pieper. I think we're going to be reliant on the right flank now that Toffolo is out, and I think it's by far our best outlet. 3-5-2, I think, is our strongest formation as well. I'm sure we'll come on to that in a bit. And so if he's given the room to roam and get in behind, I think that might be our best chance for chance creation. I was encouraged by what I've seen of Lewis O'Brien in recent games. I feel like it's more of the Lewis O'Brien we saw of old. But I do think that if this is a game for people to shine in, really. If he's afforded that space and he manages to hit them down the flank, then I think that's our chance to get in behind.
I think that's a great shout. And let's be honest, Pieper, can be a midfielder half the time anyway. He's barely a right back. So I think that's a good shout. Johnny, what about yourself? Who do you think is going to be key for Town this game? I'm
sticking with my middle of the park battle that's going on. And I'm looking at Vallejo if he indeed is chosen to start again. I've been really impressed with him lately, actually. I know he's maybe had a few flaws. Again, that Middlesbrough game, he was very flat-footed for one of their goals, wasn't he? It just played literally straight past him. But from the way that he's actually improved since the first couple of appearances I saw him in, where he looked incredibly shaky, and you thought, have they brought in a bit of a dud here? We didn't know too much about him, let's be perfectly honest, unless you'd done your YouTube research. But everyone knows on YouTube you can make yourself look pretty decent, can't you? Even we could probably make ourselves a decent highlights reel. But I think that, again, in the middle of the park, depends who goes in there, depends how they play it. But I think that Vallejo, if he is in the centre of the park, is going to have a big role to play. Playing almost that quarterback role, isn't it, as well, trying to pick things out ahead of him. And that's what I think is going to be key in this one. That little battle in the centre of the midfield is going to be something that's going to be the difference between coming away with something. Again, I'm talking about maybe even just getting a draw out of this game as opposed to going out and getting the win. I think that's going to be a big factor.
No, that's interesting with Vallejo. I think he's really come on recently.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's out of contract at the end of the season, Johnny. Do you think he's done enough to, well, both of you lads, do you think he's done enough to earn an extension, a new deal?
I think they will look to give him an extension, give him a new deal. It's a pretty paper-thin squad right now, isn't it? You've got to look at the bench, and, it's a lot of the youngsters. And we had the conversation after the game at the weekend, or before the game at the weekend, are these kids good enough? Have they been hyped up a lot. You know, we saw Aaron Rowe, who was fantastic against Swansea, wasn't he? But you look at the rest of them and go, have they been hyped up a bit too much? Your highs and the likes of that. You know, Phillips is a real prospect, a real talent, isn't he? I think we all know that. But you've still got to have some of the players that you can bring straight in and drop in. I think Carlos Carvalho quite likes it. Carlos Corberán. That's going back to my Sheffield Wednesday days. I think Carlos Corberán quite likes him as well, doesn't he? You know, I think he sees him as the right sort of character. And we know that's a big factor of what Carlos Corberán will look to do. It's the right character of player coming into the side as well. Not just the fact he speaks Spanish, which clearly helps, but it's the right sort of character coming into this team. And I think, yeah, I did an interview with him recently. He came across as a really nice bloke, which is always a good factor as well. You think, don't you? You know, if he comes across as a nice bloke, then he's probably actually pretty good to have in and around the dressing room, you'd hope. Not always about what's on the field, I suppose, in some ways.
Yeah, I guess you do need those experienced characters, don't you? Really, that's something that I guess is, you know, as fans and reporters and whatnot, we perhaps we don't see. You know, it's that thing that you need off the field, that balance. And so I'm a big advocate for the inclusion of Vallejo at the moment, and I think he's done. I think he's done enough to earn himself at least an extension. Personally, though, I liked seeing him deployed in defence against Swansea. I thought he was quite reliable there. It means that and Jonathan Hogg, of course, he was missing in midweek, but it means that Hogg doesn't have to drop back into defence. I think that Vallejo does the work far more efficiently, and he gives us that link up as well, going through the middle of the park between defence and midfield. It took him a while to get get into the swing of things. We saw him in that first game, I think against Plymouth in the FA Cup, wasn't it? And we weren't sure in the first half, but he grew into it, and he's become a better player as the months have gone on. And you do need that experienced head. And Town, that is something they've always struggled with this season, is they don't have those players you can throw in straight off the bench. I think you're quite right as well. I don't know if some of the young lads perhaps are ready, and that's no shade on them at all. I just don't think it was a time to throw them in. And I think maybe certain individuals have overestimated Town's hand this season and perhaps thrown too much youth and inexperience in at a time where I think safety was more use. And so, you know, I look at the players like Scott High, etc., who, you know, are touted for great things, and for Phillips as well, but they need to be given the time to develop at their own pace. And throwing them in, which we're seeing with Schofield now, I believe, isn't perhaps the way to do it. And so that's why the inclusion of players like Vallejo, I think, is so important. He was a real find. It took time for that to show off and maybe to wear the dust off. And so, yeah, for me, a key component of that midfield or the defence. But I think I would like to see him use more in a defensive role.
I think as well what you say there is key when you talk about these young players. And Matty Glennon, you know, the point he was making at the weekend with us was, these lads are 20, 21 and 22. You know, these young lads, they're not kids. They're not 16-year-olds, you know, and they're coming in at that age into a relegation battle. Let's, you know, be frank about it. You know, you need to still get some points on the board to make sure it isn't. These aren't kids. So are they actually of the quality that they've been hyped up to be? If it's taken them to the age of 20, 21, 22 to be making a handful, a smattering of appearances in a championship club that's at the bottom end of the championship. You know, when they're all thrown in together in the cup, let's not forget, they were beaten by a team in the division below them. You know, and that's a big ask to throw them all in together. I get that. But still, if they were that good, then at that age, they would have seen off aside from League One, you could argue. So there is a few question marks for me over some of these young players and whether that, you know, the B team as such, you know, has actually done what it was there and set out to do, which is get the players through into that level. There's a couple, absolutely, but you just wonder about the depth of that and how many of those are actually going to have a long-term future with Huddersfield Town in the Championship or beyond.
No, I agree. And I think, to be honest, I think we said this on the pod the other day, but I think the issue with the young players, I'll come on to my key player because he's a young player. But I think the issue is, I think if all was going all right and the squad was a bit deeper, some of the players who were making the bench wouldn't be here. I think they'd be out on loan at League One and League Two to develop, because we saw that with Edmonds Green. You know, he went to Swindon and now he, you know, quite rightly, I'd say he's probably one of our first starting centre backs, perhaps when he's fit. So, so we'll see. But I've actually gone for a key player for Kieran Phillips. I think just because Campbell went off with a bit of an abdominal pain, and obviously he came on. I've been impressed with Phillips from what I've seen. I don't think he's really had a sniff, but I think back to that Middlesbrough game, he should have scored, really. He was a bit unlucky, you know, great save from the keeper for one and then hitting the post. And to be honest, with this game, we have a terrible record at Preston. I think it's like we've not won in 50 years. And I wonder if we're going to get any joy out of this, we do need to maybe shake it up. And obviously with that injury to Campbell. But I think Phillips needs to start for me. You know, I think... we're kind of looking at it now, but Corberán, when we had that winning run, he didn't make any changes. And I think that's really coming back to bite him now with all the injuries. So I think, for me, give Phillips a start and see what he can do. It depends on Campbell. I think Sinogo is probably not going to be fit enough to start. If he does make a part of this match squad, we know Carlos likes to ease him in. Might not have the time to do it now the season comes to an end. But so I've gone for Phillips. I did ask you, Cam, didn't I? Because I know we got a bit sidetracked. You did pick a key player, didn't you?
Yes, I did. So I went with Pieper, but I think Phillips is again is an interesting choice as well because, if we want to look and play two strikers, do you play Dwayne Holmes off Fraser Campbell or do you go in with him from the start? He's obviously been trusted more than some of the young lads, and they don't have any reservations, the coaching staff, about throwing him in. And so maybe it'd be interesting to see him start and work alongside. I wouldn't advocate playing him on his own, perhaps just yet. I think it's at least as well until he's got that first goal. I think that I don't know what's inside the young man's head, but I imagine that is a barrier and a threshold that you want to cross. And so I think he could work well, perhaps played off an experienced man like Campbell, who is good at taking the knocks and drawing defenders out of position. Yeah, I'd be interested to see what Phillips could do. Out of all the young crop at Town at the moment, he is the one for whom I hold the highest hopes.
Yeah, and that move as well at Middlesbrough where he knocked it down the line and he did the old Gareth Bale running off the pitch, didn't he, as well, and back on that. It just shows he's got it. It shows he's got the pace there as well. And that game in particular was the one that, hit the post and you just think he's got that composure there in front of goal clearly. I think you're right, Cameron, you need to get that first goal, don't you? But to put him in there on his own, in a game against Preston, for me, would be a big ask to throw him up there on his own.
Well, we'll come on to lineups in a bit, mate, because I've got an in for not on his own. But before we do that, I think this is a lot of people's favourite section. This is Return to the Max. So still not got a jingle for it. I've asked people to sing it when they come on. They refuse. So I assume you guys aren't going to. But who are you bringing back from any former Town player? Who are you bringing back for this one-off game and why? I will go to you first, Johnny. I'm going to say mine to the end.
I'm going to roll the clock back. And I think he's got all the qualities of something that you need right now. And I'm going to go for Jeppo. I'm going to bring Jeppo back to this side and I'm going to bang him straight in because I think you need fight. I think you need guile. I think you need a bit of nastiness. At the minute, I think that's what you're missing. And I know all this from his coaching days as well. I was working at a club when he was at the club and he's got that about him. He's got that nasty streak about him. And I think you're totally missing that. You're missing goals for a starter. You're missing someone to put themselves about and you're missing someone to hold other players in that team to account. That's something that a couple of players we've seen little bites of recently. We've seen Richard Keogh do it a little bit and we've seen Jonathan Hogg do it a little bit. And even Lewis O'Brien's even had the odd bite here and there in the odd game. But I think you need someone who's really going to not accept anything less. And that if at the break you've made a mistake in that first half and you're going off down into the dressing rooms, you're probably going to be up against the wall with Jeppo, aren't you? So that's what I'm doing. I'm rolling back the clock and bringing Rocket Ronnie back to the Mac.
Well, I'm also going to roll the clock back, but I'm going to roll it back even further. In fact, when you started doing that, I was a bit worried that Johnny's going to go for my pick. But so I am going to wind the clock back to 1969, and I am going to bring back a 21-year-old Frank Worthington. That's my pick to bring back to the Mac. And do you know why? Because he scored a brace in Town's last win at Deepdale, which was in November 1969. That was 17 attempts ago. So it's not like you can even say, okay, we never beat Coventry because we never play Coventry. We've played Preston 16 times at Deepdale since that game, and we've never won. So I think if we're going to, I think that a 21-year-old Frank would do it. And also, he spent 3 years at Preston, didn't he? So he must know him like the back of his hand. A couple of England goals thrown in there for good measure as well. And, according to some sources, he could be our 7th striker. So no, for me, Frank Worthington will be the one to bring back to the Mac.
Oh, they're great shouts, lads. I mean, Worthington makes me laugh because I remember we did our Town all-time 11s, based on who you've seen, and someone had a go at me for not picking Frank Worthington. It's like, wasn't born, mate, wasn't born. But yeah, great shout. Well, I don't think mine is quite in the same category as those two. This is probably because I've been doing every one and I'm running out of picking the same players. So I've gone for a player I liked, and I think he embodies this Town team in terms of injuries. But I've gone for James Vaughn. I love James Vaughn when he was at Town. Again, an injury-prone striker, so he'll fit in well. But I was checking his stats: 33 goals in 95 appearances. I liked him. Again, I think he was. I don't know about you, Cam, because same with you, Johnny. But I think he was one of them where you knew if he was fit and firing, like he probably wouldn't be at our level. Like maybe that's my opinion, but I loved Vaughn. Great striker, so I've gone for him.
I think you're absolutely right with that. It's spot on, because I had him sort of. I mean, my dad's an Everton fan, and so I had before Town. I had the James Vaughn of old, and so if he'd had the fitness that he'd aimed for and that he wanted, yeah, he would have been a Premier League player for many more years than he was. And we knew that we weren't really getting the full James Vaughn package, were we exactly? And so it's similar to Scott Sinclair at Preston now, isn't it? And we really enjoy watching James Vaughn. Of course, he was an absolute talent, wasn't he? And it was like having Beckford at the club. It's the same sort of it's the same sort of field, and so for me, yeah, great shout. I would love a striker like Vaughn back now.
And he's had his injury problems, but like you say, wherever he's been and he's been fit, he's scored goals. I think he got 11 in about 20, 24, 25 appearances for Bradford City when he was there. Had a bit of a fallout, wanted to be closer to home, so ended up going back to Tranmere because he was living over that way. He was making a long schlep along the M62, which if you've ever done it, you never want to do it on a daily basis, do you? Never mind a weekly or monthly basis. So, he's someone who's scored goals wherever he goes. So if he was in on Saturday up top, I think people might feel a little bit more confident.
Well, lads, as well, I checked how he's getting on at Tranmere. He's got 18 goals this season. No, it's League Two, but
there you go.
Your beggars can't be choosers. Anyway, before we go on to our picks, I caught up with Josh from the Preston Fan podcast from the Finney, and he predicted a 3-1 win for them. So feeling confident. So here's what he had to say. And we're recording. Okay, I'm joined online now by Josh from the Preston podcast from the Finney. How are you, Josh?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Good to hear. Yeah, sorry, I paused there because I wanted to get it right because I said "from" too many times. So we'll chat about the game coming up this weekend at Deepdale. Huddersfield have a terrible record at Deepdale. We've not won there for I think 50 years. So not looking forward to this. But how have Preston been recently? Because from when I had a quick look, you guys weren't in the best form either.
Yeah, it's been very inconsistent this season. We've been very up and down. As of late, it's not been great, if I'm being honest. I think we've won a couple of times this year. Last one being at Blackburn away. We managed to pick up a point in midweek, which was a step in the right direction. But yeah, it's not been brilliant, and there's been a lot of negativity around North End sort of since the turn of the year.
Is that negativity at Alex Neil then, or is it just at the kind of club in general? Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yes, it's been towards Alex Neil especially, but I think it's more of a frustration towards the club generally. January was poor in terms of selling the best players, but we knew it was going to happen anyway. But we managed to bring in quite a few good signings. I was quite impressed with the work we did in January. It was a debate whether we were stronger or not, which I'm still not sort of set on. But I think we did as best we could. But yeah, the club, the direction of the club has been called into question quite a lot recently. And that's led to people questioning Alex Neil and his tactics and stuff. So it's not been a great time at North End at the minute, but hopefully we can build on midweek and sort of finish the season a bit stronger.
It's really funny you say that because I think that's exactly the same going on here at Huddersfield, as I'm sure our listeners will know. But that is, I don't want to bore you because they hear about it enough. But anyway, we'll kind of come on to the game this weekend. But just before we do, obviously last time we played each other, it was at home for us, but you guys came away with a 2-1 win. I just wanted, I realise it's a while back, but what did you guys think of that game and Huddersfield at the time?
Yeah, I thought we were quite strong actually that game. I watched the highlights back before and I think we should have had more, to be fair. Emil Rees, I think it was one of his first performances that stick in my mind anyway. And I think he gave you a really tough time. Since then, he's not done too much, to be honest. He's not been starting too many games. And when he has, he sort of struggled to have any sort of effect on the game. But I remember after that Huddersfield game, we were all very excited about him, and we all thought we've got a real strike on our hands. And I still think we do. I think there's a lot of potential with him. It's just going to take a few seasons, I think, of working with him. But I thought Huddersfield played well, to be fair, first half especially. I know Ollie, who features on our podcast, is a massive fan of your manager. And I thought you could tell straight away sort of the play that you guys were doing, the setup with the three at the back. It was clear to see, but I think what's different now is I can't see us going three at the back this weekend compared to we matched you up last time, because Alex Neil tends to do majority of the time it's three at the back away and then 4-2-3-1 at home. There's a few exceptions, but that tends to be how we work. So it'll be interesting to see if it's any different. But second half, especially when we played you at your place, it was sort of one-way traffic, I'd say. I know Emil Reese at the bar. We went for on goal 2 or 3 times when the game sort of opened up towards the end. But yeah, it was pretty good from us.
Yeah, I remember it was kind of like, I think it was 2 goals in 8 minutes, or not even that. It was like 4 minutes or something crazy. Completely turned it around, and then it was all you. I was just gonna, well, I suppose looking ahead to this game, who are the kind of key danger men for Preston, or people we need to watch out for? And well, I'll let you answer that first, and then I was going to talk about the game. Sorry, getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, our side's changed quite a bit from the last time we played you. Obviously, we saw Ben Pearson, Ben Davis. I don't think Ben Davis featured against you last time, but Patrick Bowers at the back. He's out for the season. So it will be a very different side. But Anthony Gordon is probably our most dangerous at the minute. He got man of the match on Wednesday night. He was by far our most creative player. In every sort of attacking, started with first or second. So I think there's a lot more to come from him. So I'm hoping to see him get another start. Scott Sinclair's our top scorer, so he's probably one to watch out for. But it's a bit of a weird one, Scott. We describe him as quite a bit of a moments player, in the sense that he can go 70 minutes and do nothing. You won't even realise he's on the pitch. And then he gets one chance and he scores, which, I mean, it's clinical, which we've been lacking massively at the minute. But, you kind of want 11 players that are going to affect the game. So it's a bit of a hit and miss. But I'd say he's still one of our more dangerous players. And we brought in Ched Evans in the January transfer window, which sparked quite the reaction from the fan base. But to be fair, he's playing for the shirt. You can tell he really wants it. And on a footballing level, I've been very impressed with him. His pressing's very strong. He's obviously quite a physical striker, which I didn't actually expect given his size. So I'm hoping to see him grab a couple more goals. But yeah, I'd say they're our 3 most dangerous at the minute.
No, I was looking into this for us, and I saw that Sinclair was your top scorer, and that really surprised me. But I do remember, I think he should have scored against us last time, and like you say, he didn't do anything, and then he nearly scores. So, what I suppose the game itself, what are you expecting from it? Because I think with Huddersfield recently, we saw this against Derby. Obviously, we beat Swansea. That kind of came out of nowhere, but Derby kind of really put us under the cosh with like set pieces and their physicality. But how do you expect the game to go on Saturday from a Preston perspective?
I'm cautiously confident. I say that because at home we've been pretty terrible this season, and if we'd not been so good away, we could be in serious trouble this season. So our home form's not been great. I know your away form isn't great either. I think I've speaking to a mate who's a Huddersfield fan. He said you've only won 2 away all season, so
that is correct.
He's not too confident either. But yeah, I'd say I'm pretty confident going into this one. So hopefully we can. We started very quickly against QPR. We got quite a few corners early on, so if we can match that, hopefully we can get an early goal and settle the nerves. Because I think that was our problem against QPR. We didn't get that early goal. Anthony Gordon had a few chances and missed a couple. And from there, it was sort of waiting for that goal to come, and the game just fizzled out towards the end, really.
Yeah, I've got to be honest. Like I say, with the record of Town not winning there, and I know you guys are known for your physicality, and we're just beating up for it, really. And I don't think this is going to be a good game to watch for Huddersfield, if I'm being honest. But the question I always kind of finish off with is, what's your score prediction? I know that's always tough in the Championship, but how do you think it's going to
go? I've done the preview from the Finney this weekend, and I've put 3-1. Whether North End can actually score 3 goals remains to be seen. But I'm hopeful of a win this weekend. So yeah, I'll stick with 3-1.
I like it. It's confident, mate. I mean, obviously, I hope you're so wrong, but it's good to see a bit of confidence from a fan, because we're not feeling so confident after Derby now. But no, that's great, mate. Thank you so much for coming on, and all the best for the rest of the season after Saturday, of course.
Yeah, you too, mate. Thanks very much.
Right, okay, so we've heard from Josh. Now we're going to hear from us. So, guys, Carlos Colbrand has been sacked, and he's been replaced with a management free of Johnny Buchan, Cameron Pope and Brady Frost. But so you are picking the team. I realised I had to qualify that because you all look shocked. Anyway, I'll come to you first, Johnny. What's your lineup? Who's in your team? You're in charge, mate.
So, and this is with players who we know are available, is it? Yeah, this is. So I can't go. I'm sticking Danny Ward up there because, let's be honest, Danny Ward's not going to be playing much football, is he?
Well, this is it, mate. I mean, to be honest, whenever we do this, we then get the press conference, and it's like, oh, they're out for 4 to 5. What you go with what you got at the time.
Who knows? Okay, so I'm going with 3 centre halves for this one, and I'm going to drop Vallejo back into the centre of defence, I think. So I'm going to drop Vallejo back with Sarr and Keogh. Schofield's in goal. I'm not changing Schofield. You can't really change Schofield in many ways, can you? You got to keep going with him. So I'm dropping Vallejo back. I'm then going to go O'Brien and Bacuna in the middle. You've got Rowe and you've got Pieper, of course, as your wide men. And then you've got to go with Fraser Campbell up top. And then do you either go with someone alongside him, so you've weakened your centre of the park? And I did say that the centre of the park is going to be a key battle here, so I'm not sure I would do that. I think I may draft in, if he's available as well, Jonathan Hogg back into the fold to go in the middle of the park with O'Brien and Bacuna to give them two a little bit more flexibility, with the Hogg sat in front of your back three of Sarr, Keogh and Vallejo, and then Campbell, if again is available, up front. If not, Ronnie Jepson. He's leading the line.
If Campbell doesn't play it from the, I know you'd love to bring Ronnie Jepson back in, and he'd probably still do a job at this age. Who would you go for instead? Would you put Phillips in?
Would you put Phillips in? Could you give Holmes a run up there? I don't know whether he'd be big enough to hold it for you. I know that Carlos has said that he can play in 3 or 4 positions, hasn't he? He can play left, he can play right, he can play as your 10, he can play as your false 9. Can he play as your 9? Is the question. I think you've got to give Phillips a go at some point, haven't you? And if Danny Ward's not fit, and if Fraser Campbell's not fit, and if you don't fancy Holmes at 9, then you've got to give him a go. You've got to, and just see what happens with it. You never know. It could be the moment. It could be the turning point, couldn't it? It could be the day that he really kicks on, and you've suddenly found this gem. You've got to give him a go. So yeah, if Campbell isn't fit, I'd be going with Phillips up there.
Great shout, Cam. What about yourself? Because I think we're all going to have to go for 3 at the back, and you alluded to that earlier.
Well, we're certainly going with 3 at the back on my count, and but I think the questions start with the number 1 jersey or the number 31 jersey. I think, looking at it, I think this would be the perfect game to put Ben Hamer back in. And I was worried when we announced that we were letting go of Ben Hamer, and it seems fairly obvious why it's happened, because obviously he was brought in when we were in the Premier League, and it seems to be a cost-cutting measure. Of course, we don't. There may be added factors. He may have wanted to move, but he lost his place in the team not because of form this season. He was playing very well. He just lost his form because of fitness. And Ryan Schofield did well to claim the goalkeeper's jersey off him. That perhaps, I don't want to call it beginner's luck. I don't think that does him justice, but perhaps it's all come a bit too soon. And I think that maybe now will be the time. Okay, he's had that first team experience. Now will be the time to put an experienced pair of hands in goal. Of course, we can't do that. And so we've got to pick between 3 unknown quantities. Jason Leutweiler, okay, not played a great lot of football recently. And so I look at him, I think, I don't know. I don't know if that's a risk worth taking. So I stick with Schofield. I put Schofield in at the back. Back 3. I'm going to have Sarr and Keogh, and I'm also going to have Alex Vallejo that I alluded to earlier, him dropping back. I'd move Dehaney off to the bench. I think that leaves in the middle of the park. I think you've got a question to ask there, because I think Aaron Rowe has to go on the left. 1, because he impressed against Swansea, and 2, because there's not really anyone else now that Jaden Brown is suspended. Pieper, of course, goes on that right wing back sort of position, whether you want to call it 5-3-2 or 3-5-2. I'd have O'Brien and Bacuna in the centre. And then it depends who's complementing them. Do you go with Hogg if he's fit? If he's not fit, I think you have to go with High. And so that's who I would probably throw in. Hogg would be my first choice. And so upfield, I'm going to say Campbell with Holmes playing just off him. However, I've been swung by what we've been saying so far, and I'm going to say that I would like to see the inclusion of Phillips from half time. I guess you do have the option, of course, if you start with Phillips up front, you can drop Holmes back into the midfield.
Yeah.
Perhaps there's no need to play high then. But you're going to have, I would imagine, you're going to have high for one half and Phillips for another. That means we've got enough experience on the park, I would imagine. And it's not asking too much of either player. It's not all thrown on their shoulders. So that would be my 11. So obviously Schofield and net, back three of Sarr, Keogh, Bayeko, Pieper out wide. So is Rowe, O'Brien, Bacuna in the middle. We're going to go high in the centre if Jonathan Hogg isn't fit, and then Holmes and Campbell up front.
No, I think that's a great choice, mate. To be honest, with my selection, I have been debating over the keeper, and I have taken Schofield out. I think.
Oh,
yeah, I think it's really harsh. I was debating this. Obviously, it was immediately after Derby, but I spoke to those Derby fans in great detail, and they said to me, "We are great at set pieces, we're great at corners, and we put pressure on the goalkeeper." And Schofield, for me, I completely agree with you, Cam. I think when he came in, he did great. He was a great shot stopper, and particularly that Watford game where he's making save after save, I was like, oh God, we've got a great keeper on our hands here. I do think this is one of them games where we're probably not expected to get much, given because of the history and given because of the record. And I wonder with Schofield, I know he's got to learn. I know youngsters going to make mistakes, but Johnny said it quite right. We're getting drawn into a relegation battle here, and I'd hate for him. He's made a few mistakes. I said this the other day on the pod in Swansea with that free kick. We all know Conor Hourihan's going to shoot, and I think he could do better there, to be honest. And I thought we were going to lose that game, given that, given typical Town how we throw games away, and you could probably argue he was at fault. So I've put Lutweiler in. Reason being, he is a bit of an experienced guy. I know he was playing in League One for Fleetwood, but he's played 18 games this season. He's experienced, and from what I've heard chatting to Blackburn fans and Fleetwood fans, he seemed quite solid. And I do think, again, if we're not expected too much, maybe let Schofield have a rest and come back. Schofield was still the number one for me, but maybe switch it. So I've left Schofield out, but I've gone 3-5-2 as well. I've put Vallejo in because I agree with you, lads. I think particularly in that Swansea game, he was great in centre back position. I've put Stearman in instead of Keogh. Stearman's come back fit. I think
Keogh. All right, okay.
Yeah, I think the reason I was debating whether him or Sarr to leave out, because I think, well, we all know what Naby Sarr's been like this season, but I have to say, I think he's been all right the last couple of games, Naby, compared to him giving it away to people. So I'd drop Keogh. I think Keogh and Stearman are quite similar players as well. So I'd give Stearman a go. And then for my 5, I've got Pippa, I've got O'Brien, I've got Hogg, because I think we miss him. And again, we've not heard he's been ruled out this game yet, so I'm going with that. I've got Rowe on the left because, again, options, but I think he's played well. Gone for Pritchard. I was really not impressed with Bacuna, and Bacuna's so frustrating because I've said this a million times. I'm sure you agree, Cam, but we all know what the talent the lad has. On his day, he's amazing, and I think if he was consistent and was amazing every game, he would probably be a £15 million player. But that Derby game was typical Bacuna on a bad day. And I think I'm still convinced the best we've seen of him consistently was when Cowley had him coming off the bench. So I'll put Pritchard in. I'm not expecting Pritchard to do much, but what I will say is Pritchard is quite good at kind of weaving forward, but then when he gets forward, he's not so. And again, I think we just need to throw up a couple of surprises. I'm assuming Campbell's not fit just because I don't think Town have been lucky with injuries. So I have put Phillips in because I think Sonogo probably will be on the bench maybe because I saw his interview today and he's like, I can play. So I don't think we've got a choice in. I've got Holmes because I think you touched on it, Cam, as well. Holmes, that 3-5-2 against Swansea, I think worked really well. And I think Holmes was kind of great as that pressing of a kind of striker. And I do think with this, it's a couple of changes, and I realise that doesn't always help. But I do think we need to do something. And also, I'm putting Bacuna on the bench. We might have Sonogo, we might have Campbell. We've got Mbenza, who I don't think is quite fit to start just yet. We have got options if it doesn't work. And I know Corberán doesn't make loads of subs, but we do have 5 subs, and we could change it up if it's not working. So I think we just need a bit of freshness. So that's why I've gone for quite a few changes.
Wow, that's surprising. I mean, I know you've both said you watched the Derby game and it was absolutely dreadful, but to me, Pritchard coming in, I can't say I've seen
That's
anything
that
from
choice.
Pritchard that suggests he should be anywhere near the squad, never mind the starting 11. Wow.
I still have sleepless nights when I think about just how much money was spent on him. This is okay,
how much is still giving him week by week.
Honestly, I mean, there's that, and how much money's been going out to injured players at the moment. Those are the two worrisome things. But with Pritchard, I think it's interesting what you say about Buchan, because we all, like you say, we all know what Buchan has been like this season, and it takes a real man manager to get the best out of him. I sort of hope that would be what Carlos brought, given that he's worked with a lot of young players at Leeds, and that he is an experienced coach. I mean, he's been coaching 14 years. He might only be a young man, and so you hope that he might have had an ounce to tap into that, like the Cowleys did. Jury's still out on that one for me. I think a lot of what Juninho Bacuna does is just up to Juninho Bacuna, to be quite honest, and that's something that I've thought more and more throughout the season. But what I will say for Bacuna is that he flips between a 9 out of 10 and a 3. With Pritchard, you're getting a consistent 6. And so again, it's a gamble, isn't it? You know, he's hot for one game and he's cold for 2 more. So I don't know. I think Bacuna, I'm still a fan of him at the moment. I still want him in and around that team. Very, very frustrating to watch, but you need those players that can turn the games in the head. And that's why I'm pleased to see that we've been linked with Ravel Morrison. Okay, I'm pleased that that name's been thrown about. We've not seen anything official on that yet, of course, and I wouldn't be surprised that when we do, or if we do, we might see a double-ended tweet saying he's signed, and then it's been injured in a murder ball session the way that looks going at the moment. So who knows? But that's the sort of player we need, with a bit of flair. Hard to tame sometimes and hard to manage, but Bacuna does bring that, and so for me, I would want him near that side. But it's interesting that we've gone for different goalkeepers. It's such a difficult one to assess at this point in the season. Really, do you bring in Leutwiler now, who of course is accustomed, like you said, to League One, and then hardly played at Blackburn before he was at Fleetwood, and so and then you don't know how linked in with the system of the team he is, and so really starting completely afresh, and does that completely kill Schofield's momentum and any confidence he might have, any chance he's got from bouncing back from this. That's why I stuck with him in the end. I thought maybe it's just you're not getting the value for your bet in putting Leutwiler in, perhaps. But time will tell. And what I really don't want him to see is him to continue this poor run of form, and then you're forced to take him out in a few weeks' time when his confidence is at an unsalvageable low.
I think that's.
I just wonder what.
Sorry, James.
Sorry, go on. No, go on, Brady. Go on, mate.
No, I was just going to say, I agree with you. I think Schofield's for number one. How I'd position that is, look, you're the number one. I think let's have this game off. Let's get you back in for Birmingham, because that's a must-win game for Huddersfield, and it's up to him then. But I do think he's got weaknesses, and like Preston are a rough side, and they're going to target him. And to be honest, I think you're right, Cam. I think if it carries on, he might have to be taken out because he's in poor form. Whereas I think this might give him a chance to be like, all right, okay, and then come back in. Anyway,
I view it a bit differently, because I think if you take him out and you bring Leutwiler in, and you're saying there, Brady, well, we'll get you back in for the Birmingham game. Firstly, what if Leutwiler has an absolute worldie? You can't then bring him back in for the Birmingham game, Schofield, because you can't just drop Leutwiler. You can't just do that. And what impact would that have on him if you did do that? And also, on the flip side of it, you bring Leutwiler and he has an absolute mare, and you lose the game against Preston, and then you've already bombed off your number one young lad who's now thinking, well, that's it, I've had my go and I'm now stuck on the bench. Oh, this guy's even worse than you, pal, so back in you come. What impact does that have on Ryan Schofield? I think with Schofield, yes, he's absolutely made some errors. I don't think he's necessarily the main contributing factor as to why you're in this relegation battle. Could he become it if he keeps making errors? Absolutely, anyone could, though, couldn't they? Leutwiler comes in and makes some absolute howlers, and he could become it. I think you've got to keep going with Schofield, keep going, and then you hope you get enough points, you get yourself safe, you think, right, okay, well, we don't think he's good enough to take us to that next level, for example, and you move on and you try and get somebody else. But I just think you've got to keep going with him until he's having absolute howlers. And I don't think he is at times having absolute howlers. Yes, he's making a few mistakes, but young goalkeepers are always highlighted. In particular, goalkeepers are always highlighted, but particularly young ones, when they make mistakes, they're going to make them. But you've got to just hope that they make less and less as they go along. But the only way that's going to happen is if you keep playing them.
Interesting. I'm glad we're going on about this, lad, so much, because I realise, looking at my lineup, we've avoided Pritchard a little bit. But yeah, I think these changes aren't. Well, I think this is the most I've ever been questioned about my lineup. But to be honest, Huddersfield, we don't have a lot of options. So I still think Schofield's. I completely agree with you. He's a young lad. I think he is the number one. He's good, but Yeah, I'm just going for the change. It's my team. You know, I live and die by my decisions. He probably won't start anyway. Let's be honest, Schofield will be in anyway. So, but yeah, anyway, we will see. But anyway, we could probably talk about Luttweiler or Schofield all evening. But we will end this podcast with what we're all expecting from the game and our score predictions. I'll jump in first very quickly. This is going to be a really tough game. I think what really worries me about Town is we are in this relegation battle, and I'd be interested to see if you lads agree with this, but I look at teams who haven't got as much quality as us, like Wycombe and Rotherham and all those, and they have fight, at least they have fight about them, whereas I can't really say with the current, yes, we've got injuries, there doesn't seem to be a lot of fight. I think we're a bit of a soft touch at the moment, and Preston are rough. We saw what happened last season where Elphick got that nasty injury, and Preston will be in our faces and rough, and particularly if Hogg doesn't play, you know, if he fails a fitness test, I'm concerned about that. I think it depends on who scores first. I think if we score first, I could see this being a draw because Preston are terrible at home. But if Preston score first, I think it's going to be. I think it's probably going to be a 2-0. So I'm gonna go 1-1 and be positive. But I think this is going to be a real tough game for Town. Cam, what about yourself?
Well, I hope I'm wrong. I'm going to say that we lose 2-1. I think it's going to be difficult. I don't think that the magnitude of this game and the difficulty of the task is lost on anybody inside or outside of the camp. We've not won in 16 visits of Deepdale. I think on Monday we'll be able to say we haven't won in 17. Again, and it's interesting what you say there, Brady. I agree with the fact that you look at teams who on paper are weaker than us, but seem to be able to pull it together as a unit. At the moment, Town, okay, they're a unit, and I don't think that, you know, I don't seem to see any discord, etc., or players falling out. I think that everyone wants Huddersfield Town Football Club to do well. I just don't know if the system is right at the moment. I don't know if the atmosphere is right. I just don't know quite what is going wrong. But tactically, we've been off the boil. Individual errors have been costing us. And so, yeah, exactly. We're the team that you want to play, and you're the team that we want to play now. This is a perfect time to play Huddersfield Town, you know, when they're away from home. And so for that reason, I can only see it going one way. I'm going to be positive, and my version of being positive for this one is to say we get a goal. I think we might lose 2-1, to be quite honest, though. I think we might even take the lead, which is always a safe bet, isn't it, really? Town to take the lead and then to go on and lose the game. And okay, Preston have only won 4 at home this season, but we've only won 2 on the road. I think that's going to remain 2, if I'm honest.
God, this positivity. Johnny, come on, say something positive.
I'm ending on a high for you. I was flip-flopping 2-1 either way because I think it will be tight. I think it will be fairly competitive and combative, I think, which is why I've been talking about the centre of the park for the majority of the night. You know, they're not scoring at home, but Town do score away from home, don't they? You know, okay, you're not getting results away from home, but you have been finding the back of the net away from home. Not many times, but still. And I'm going for the Phillips late winner in this one. I'm going to go 2-1 Town with a late Phillips winner, and it is the start of a fantastic career for Phillips, and hopefully the start of a bit of a couple of results for Huddersfield Town that really do make you guys have a little bit more of a relaxing end to the season than it's looking set like it might be at the moment. But I do think it'll be tight. I do think it'll be a tight one, yeah.
Well, we'll see, but that has made me feel a lot more positive. Here's hoping. That was a lovely story you wove there. I can just see it happening on Saturday. But we will find out anyway. But yeah, thanks to my guests for coming on. Cheers for coming on, lads. And thanks to everyone for listening as always. And we will see. We'll be back with a Birmingham preview. Big game that we'll see anyway. But yeah, thanks for listening.
Oh, what a night. Late in May in 2017, Schindler scored, it was a effing dream. What a feeling, what a night. Oh, what a night. Wagner singing, we are Premier League. The greatest sight St. George's Square did see. What an evening, what a night. Oh, I got a funny feeling when he walks and a fence, and then the commentator yelled he takes that chance. Oh, what a night. Lost so safe in mesmerizing me. Low charge and flattened all Chelsea. Stamford Bridge, oh what a night. Whoa, I got a funny feeling when he walks and a fence, and then the commentator yelled, he takes that chance.